In this episode of Ham Radio Playground, we are going to be building a quarter wave 2-meter antenna. Okay, Kevin, but that's a pretty standard antenna. What's the catch? Glad you asked. We are going to build it all in for less than $10, using almost all locally sourced items from our favorite box stores. Let me introduce you to the coat hanger antenna. A quarter wave ground plane antenna that you, yes, you can build. This is an easy and simple antenna to build. The best part is it's affordable, doable, and easily sourced by those just getting started. Now let's get the nerdy details out of the way. So we know, or should know, according to the grouchy dinosaurs, that to build a half-wave antenna, we would use 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz that we want to transmit on. With some basic math, to get the calculation for a quarter wave would be to take the 468 and divide it in half, since a quarter is half of a half, thus giving us 234. Based on this, our formula for calculating our elements would be 234 divided by our frequency in megahertz. We are building this antenna for the 2-meter band, which is 144 megahertz to 148 megahertz. Since we want this antenna to be peak for the entire band, let's choose 146 megahertz for our calculation, as it is roughly the center of the band. So with this, we take the 234 and we divide it by 146, and we end up with 1.60273972, or, for ease, 1.60. But hang on a minute, we are not done here. Before you go cutting up everything, we still need to convert this to inches. For this, we take the 1.60 and multiply it by 12, since there are 12 inches in a foot. This gives us 19.2. All right, the length for each of our elements needs to be 19.2 inches. We are building a ground plane antenna, so we will need a total of 5 elements, roughly 19.2 inches each. But do not start cutting yet. We will do this together in a moment. Let's go over the materials we will need. 5 wire coat hangers. You can pick up a 10-pack of wire coat hangers at Walmart for $2.48. We only need half the pack, so our cost is $1.24. Alternatively, we could use 12-gauge copper wire. So if you've got old Romex laying around or old copper wire, please feel free to use that, saving yourself this expense. But with the price of copper today, I don't think we'd want to use Romex bought from the big box stores for this project. We will need 4 ring terminal connectors. Home Depot sells them in a 15-pack for $4.38. Since we only need 4, our cost is $1.16. You'll also need 4 number 6 32 half-inch bolts and 4 number 6 32 nuts. While I was at Walmart, I picked up a 17-pack for a quarter. That brings our cost down to half a penny. Now, if we had to purchase these elsewhere, I believe Walmart was $1.20 normal price for these packages. Why they had them clearanced, I have no idea. Screws and nuts don't go bad. Home Depot, Lowe's, they all sell packages of these various sizes, anywhere from 10 to 20 in a package for roughly like $1.50, $1.60 a package. So you can easily obtain them local. We will also need a 2-foot piece of 3/4 inch PVC. Now I picked up mine at Home Depot. It was $2.11. However, as a veteran, I get 10% off, bringing my cost down to $1.80. For the sake of everybody out here, I just left it in as $2.11 when we calculated our cost. You'll also need an SO239 chassis connector. If you're lucky enough to have a radio shop in town, you can probably pick one of these up local or at a ham fest or even some electronic stores. Where I'm located, there isn't really radio shops. There are ham fests, and there is an electronics store that I know I could have gone and picked these up, but I had already had some on hand. I had previously purchased a 3-pack on Amazon for $9.99, so my cost was $3.33. Now your cost on these will vary based on where you pick them up. That's it, with an exception of a piece of coax and some tools, which most of us already have. Our total cost, $7.84.5. Yes, that half cents, because we picked up the package of nuts and bolts for a quarter. If needed, you could pick up an inexpensive 10-foot coax cable with PL259 connectors on it at Amazon for $9.99. So what tools do we need? Well, a couple basic items you probably already have lying around your shack. But don't let this list deter you. In another video, which I will link in the description, we go over places to get some basic tools inexpensively when getting started in the hobby. Let your tools and your shack grow with you. You will need a pair of wire strippers, a pair of wire crimps, which some may have a stripper built in. You'll also need a pair of wire snips or dikes. You will also find that some strippers and some crimpers have them built in. You will also need a pair of pliers or a wrench or nut drivers and a screwdriver for assembling the bolts. A soldering iron and some solder. Don't let that scare you away. You can pick up inexpensive soldering irons for a couple of dollars at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, Harbor Freight, or even your local auto supply store. Hint, hint, in the video, I use a butane soldering iron that I picked up at my local Napa for $10, $15. I've had it so long, I don't remember what I paid for it. You'll also need a ruler or a tape measure for measuring our elements. Woohoo! Let's go build the antenna.
Warning.
But wait, we have a warning. This build is not dinosaur approved. You may feel the bark of a dinosaur as you spread your joy of accomplishing your newly built by you antenna. Simply brush off the bark and continue enjoying the ham radio hobby.
And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for.
And here's our finished product. Alright, so we've got all of the supplies we need. The parts, the tools, our cable. One thing I like to do is cut a little hole into here so that I can put the cord up through. That way it's not coming out of the bottom. That way if I want to mount this on a mast or anything else, I'm able to do that. Now one thing you want to do when you're cutting this hole is you want to make sure that you're cutting larger than the diameter of the end, because the way you come in at an angle, it's got to fit up in there. You can use something like a step bit if you have a small step bit that starts off with a large size. You're probably going to be looking about an inch, maybe even more. You can use a Forstner bit. What I did, because I couldn't get a step bit all the way in here and I couldn't find my Forstner bits, I used a paddle bit to start a hole. And then continue to cut it with a pair of wire snips to make sure I could get my cable up in there. One thing you want to do if you do it that way is to make sure you file down these edges so you have no sharp edges, or melt them with a hot soldering iron, or tape them or something so that you don't run the risk of putting a nick into your cable. So, alright, let's get started with our hangers. Alright, so one of the first things we want to do is untwist this top end of the hanger.
Warning, warning, a production incident has occurred.
I don't know what I was thinking telling you to untwist this. You don't need to. All you got to simply do is cut on this side or this side. Either one will work. A hanger's plenty long enough just cutting it just after the bend. That way you don't have to go and try and straighten it back out. Then you only have to worry about one real area of straightening.
Alright, doing that one-handed wasn't going to work, so I just did it off camera. Basically all you're going to do is straighten out the bends. If you're a perfectionist, you can get in here with pliers or a linesman tool and kind of straighten out the ends. So our next step, we know from our calculation we need these to be 19.2 inches. So 19 1/4 is 19.25. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to 19 1/4, and we're just going to come back a hair. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to get a clean end right here. get away from all this twisted stuff. We're going to cut right here. Then I'm going to measure out 19.2 inches. Then I'm going to make my second cut. So I have these nice cable cutters that will cut your finger right off. So be careful putting it in there, because you don't want it to cut off. Crash. I'm just going to move this over to the side over there. View of what I'm working on. So our next step, measure 19.25. Again, if you got OCD, you can straighten out these simply by taking a pair of linesmen's or a pair of pliers, and where they're bent, just straighten them out. This is the one time that being close is good enough. There's 19.25, so we'll come back one line. And we're gonna go. Alright, so I nicked it where I need to cut it, and now I'm just gonna cut it. So there we have it. We have the first one cut, and we're going to end up using that as our measuring tool for the rest, because this is a royal pain trying to do and film at the same time. Usually I have a tripod set up to do my recording, and unfortunately I didn't bring it out today. So we're left with me holding it in my hand. So I do have a second angle shot, so we'll see how the B-roll goes, and maybe we'll weave some in. But let's get to cutting our other pieces. Remember, we need 5 of them at 19.2. Alright, so we got all 5 pieces cut. Like I said, if you got OCD and you want to make them straighter, go right ahead. As long as they're roughly, all 19.2, good enough. So our next step is to strip back one end of each of these. 4 of them we are going to put ring connectors on, and the other we are going to solder into our SO239 connector. So let's go ahead and do that now. We can use a pair of dikes, we can use wire strippers, whatever you got lying around to be able to strip a little bit off the end, so that our connectors are making a connection with the bare metal inside these hangers. Alright, now that we have those cut, we didn't take much off of the ends of them, just enough to put our connectors on, and one is just a little bit longer, so when we put it in the SO239 connector, it'll fit. So let's go ahead and put those on and crimp them now. You want to make sure that it's just snug. Don't worry about if you got a little exposed bare metal, because you want this to come through right to about the tip. See if I can get it one-handed. Can't get it to focus on you. So see how that's too much? It blocks our hole. We just want to put it right to the edge. And what we'll do is we'll put them into our crimpers, and we'll squeeze down on this blue part, and that'll secure that connection on that wire. Now, what I said don't worry about if you got exposed wire is you can use something like Scotch 33 black electrical tape to help weatherproof it and keep it sealed. Or you can use, what I like to use is marine grade heat shrink. And I pick it up at Harbor Freight, and I pick up a whole box of it. So here's the box, for like $3 or $4. So you can't beat it. There's 42 pieces in here, you know, different sizes. So we will use this. We'll put some on in a minute on our connectors, and that'll help seal up that after we crimp them, as well as once we solder in our SO239, we'll put one down to help weather protect that as well. Alright, so let me crimp these. So these are pretty easy to come down, especially when you have ratcheting crimpers. You can be sure to get it nice and tight. And the other thing I like to do is I'll crimp it twice. So I'll crimp one spot right up here at the front, and then I come down a little bit and crimp again to make sure that it's nice and secure. One other thing you can do is do a tug test, kind of just pull on it a little bit, make sure it's going to be secure. Now, like I said, I like to put a little heat shrink on there. You can do the same. I didn't have it in the original parts list because it's optional. The other thing I do is put a little bit of heat shrink on this end because we do have a cut that is exposed. If I can get it to focus. It's not going to focus. And that just prevents any rusting or anything else or any issues down the line. You can also use something like Plastidip and put it on there to help secure that coating. If you're purely using this inside and not keeping it outside as a permanent antenna and worried about the weather, you can skip that step. Alright, for our heat shrink, we just cut one piece of this tube down to the same size. We cut 4 pieces, and we just slid it down the wire to cover up our connection, and now we're gonna throw some heat on it. Now that we have that done on our 4 radials, you'll see that the finished product, if I can get it to focus because it's black on black, is a nice clean wrapped end, sealed up with some weather tight. Now you don't need a fancy heat gun like what I have that's battery powered. You can get one that plugs in. You can use a hair dryer. I've even seen people use something like a Bic lighter to melt shrink wrap or heat wrap. The other thing that's out there is, the reason I went with marine grade is it's a little bit more durable when exposed to the weather. It's designed to be out on boats that get wet. You can use regular heat shrink if you want. You can also use the heat shrink that has the glue inside that kind of seals up the connection. But let's go ahead and do our other ends of the elements. Now, one of the things we did was we did cut 5 pieces because we're also going to need one on our element that we'll put on the end as well. But when I put these on, I leave a little bit hanging over so that when we melt it, it kind of tightens down. And one of the other things is this coating that's on these hangers will melt from the heat, and then what it does is it backfills into that space. I don't know if you can see it on there, with this wax coating, and then it helps just seal it right up so that it keeps the weather out of it. Alright, let's get to soldering our element into our SO239 connector. So take the plastic cap off of that. We've got our SO239, and we are literally just going to stick it right inside this hole, and then we're going to solder around it. Now, I use a butane soldering iron. I also have a couple soldering stations, one that's a portable, quick plug-in soldering iron, El Cheapo from Harbor Freight or whatever. And then I've got a nice soldering station that I use for working on circuit boards. This is nice because you can take it in the field with you. You're doing connectors, you're doing ends. Very inexpensive. I don't know, like 10, 15 bucks or something. I bought it at an auto parts store. If you have a Napa near you, go check them, or check your local store. It takes butane, just like a Zippo lighter, and you put it inside, and then fire it up, and it heats up, and you're able to melt the solder right in there. Alright, so let's get to doing that. As you can see, we just literally stick it in there. It's a little loose, that's why we're going to solder it. And don't worry about a little excess sticking up, because like I said, we're going to shrink wrap this whole thing. You can use tape, you can use whatever you need to use. If you really wanted to, you could try to force it down in a little bit, but as long as we're making connection with this gold piece sticking up, then we're good. Alright, we got that all soldered in. So now we just need to put some, we can let this cool down a little bit, and then we'll put some heat shrink over it. And then we'll also heat shrink the other end. And then this piece is done. All we have to do is add our screws and put on our radials. And our antenna is complete. All right, so let's get the heat shrink ready. All right, now what we did was use 2 pieces of heat shrink, 2 different sizes. So the first piece was large enough to get up over the end of the connector and seal it, but wasn't large enough at the end to seal around our coat hanger. So we used another piece that would seal that along with the coat hanger. All right, so we just need to put our end on there and then put our screws and nuts along with our radiators on, and we're done. We can fire this up on a radio, see how it works, and go from there. Okay, now that we have all our elements on hand tight, what we want to do is take them and make them come out from the corners at an angle. So one at a time, and then you'll tighten it down, and then what you'll do is bend your radiator so that it's at a 45-degree angle. All right, I'm going to do that now. So there we go. This is what it looks like. We got our elements hanging off. Our element up there are 4 radials. So the only thing left to do is connect our cable and put it onto our PVC pipe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So as you can see, we just have it resting on a pole zip tied to the table, just so that I don't have to hold it in my hand while trying to hold the phone to film. Ignore the mess, we're doing some cleanup in our yard. But I've got a Quanshang handheld, very inexpensive. I actually won this as a door prize at a Hamfest. And we're just going to key up a local repeater with the whip antenna that's on it. All right, this local repeater should give us some kind of tones back. Now let's switch over to our new coat hanger antenna. To make this work, I did have to put an adapter on here since the HT has a different style connector. All right, so we're all connected. As you can see, no shenanigans. That's that same cable going up to our new coat hanger antenna, and we should be able to hit this repeater and get tones back. KE2 DFQ testing. There you have it, the coat hanger antenna. A simple, easy build. Any ham can do it. This is almost your rite of passage in the first antenna you should build as a brand new ham.
All right, I know what you're saying. All right, Kevin, great. It works. You're able to key up a repeater. But does it really perform? As you'll see, we'll walk through the slides from our rig expert where we scan the whole band. The SWR starts at 1.25 to 1 at the low end of the band. And it slightly increases as it goes over. Now, we tuned this thing for 146. So what does that get us? Well, when we look at exactly at 146, we're at an SWR of 1.32 to 1. And it was fluctuating between 1.3 and 1.32. One thing we did do when we first connected up and when we were testing with the repeater, I did not have the radiating elements fully down at a 45-degree angle. And we were seeing some oddballs about an SWR of about 1.5, which really wasn't bad either. But simply bending those down a little bit more so they're more of a 45-degree angle and allowed us to get better readings across the board. And here we ran the Nano VNA so that you could see the SWR across 142 to 148 with a center of 146 and a Smith chart in the background. So is this like top-notch No, and these tests could be skewed a little because there was a dumpster right next to us. We were only a couple feet up off the ground. What would be interesting is really to put it up on one of the masts and see what we get with no metal interference or anything else, because that may play a role into giving us some funky readings. What I didn't capture on video, and I wish I had, was right after I got done recording and I started packing up. A friend of mine reached out and I told him that, you know, I just finished building it. He's like, hey man, let's hop on and hit a bunch of repeaters and see what it does. And we hit multiple repeaters on the outskirts of the greater Syracuse, New York area, which is where I'm in. And man, it was sounding like I was right next door in the same room as the guy I was connecting with. Same thing, receiving him sounded like he was sitting right next to me at the table. And then we had another local ham kind of jump into the conversation, and you know, he was enjoying that, making the connection. You know, granted, he's a few miles up the road from me, and he's got quite the antenna farm. But you know, it was great connecting with him and being able to show that you know, this could work. That this simple antenna made from coat hangers can work. So I don't want to ever hear the excuse from somebody that it's too expensive to get into this hobby. It is not affordable, whatever the excuses are, because literally we proved it with a $15 radio, a $10 radio, whatever it would be, depending on the package you buy them in. You could do this with a Baofeng if you wanted to. $8 in parts, sourced locally, couple of tools, bam, you're on the air. Alrighty, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to our channel, and share this video with anybody you think could find the encouragement to go build themselves a coat hanger antenna. Alrighty, 73.